Hello. Hi, everyone there. Hope everyone is well. Thank you for joining us. Maybe you can just comment and let us know where you're watching this live from. It'll be interesting to know. So I'm joined here by Elma, who is like a superstar, I think.
And the longer we speak, the more books are falling over. I don't know if there's an earthquake in Johannesburg at this stage.
Maybe they want to come closer. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they want to join the conversation. Oh gosh,
Ooh.
There's another one. There's a cat behind me here, and he is very fascinated by this book business falling over.
Oh, okay.
Hello. Hi. So yeah, you might see some cat traffic in the background.
All right. So just to introduce, so we are talking to Elma today, and mainly about her book that came out that is like handy for anyone who wants to harness the power of social media. So just to introduce Elma, she's a sport host on Jacaranda FM's Breakfast with Martin Bester. She's a presenter on SABC3's Trending SA. She does digital content for the ICC and World Rugby. And if this is not enough, she actually even wrote a book called Become an Influencer. And she did not get a translator. She also wrote it herself, the Afrikaans version of it. I'm like, it's really amazing. Like, it's a lot. So hi, Eve. Thank you for joining us. She's from Stellenbosch, and Lasetso from Cape Town. And hi, Nyasha, joining from Cape Town. So I work with Nyasha. So my first question to you is, you are such a busy person. I'm like, your resume is full. I think they're calling you people the hyphenate, because you're like a //////. That's how long your CV is. So how did you find the time to write a book and have it published?
Well, there's this thing that happened in the year 2020 called lockdown. I don't know if you heard about it, but I have to credit lockdown for the opportunity that it allowed me to really buckle down and focus, which is also why the project mushroomed a bit. It became both an English and an Afrikaans book and an ebook, the companion ebook, because I had so much time to sit and write that it kind of grew legs. So remember, the work that I do kind of comes in bursts. So last year I was away for a lot of the year at the Cricket World Cup and at the Rugby World Cup. And then when I came back from Japan, I covered the Nedbank Golf Challenge for a week. And then in December and January, I was just kind of steadily treading along, doing radio in the mornings. I was doing some development work for Vodacom, looking ahead to Super Rugby this year. But I had time, and I had also gained so much in terms of the learnings of 2019 that I felt quite strongly about using it to benefit more than just myself and the immediate people that I have contact with, and the shows that I personally worked on. So I started having these interviews with other influencers. I started reaching out to people I know in the industry, and kind of tentatively did the interviews first.
Yeah.
And then once I did the interviews, I felt like I really had something here.
So
when did you writing?
When did you start like interviewing and writing?
End of last year already. So in December last year, the interviews kind of all took place December, January. And some of them still happened in Feb. I think the last person I interviewed, I think, was Vian Magic, the TikTok influencer.
Right.
And I think that might have been March, early March. And I'd already started writing. I was kind of a few chapters in already, and I was still doing interviews. So I was kind of constantly trying to pen down my own honest, unfiltered thoughts, and then having conversations with people, and then writing again and having conversations. And but the bulk of the kind of refinement process of the writing took place in March, April. And then, of course, the fact that we couldn't go anywhere in April really helped me to plant myself here behind this desk with some cats to keep me company. And just, like that cat gift that just types away. I felt like that cat.
When everyone else was doing bread, you were like, actually, I'm going to write a book, get my book done.
Yeah,
everyone was doing banana bread. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, and luckily I have a husband who cooks like a dream, and he never really needs any of my input. I made kombucha and compost, and that was the extent of my contribution. The irony is, so the pain in the writing process wasn't the writing. It's, I could probably write a book this thick if someone would just let me kind of go.
Yeah.
The pain in the writing process is the editing, is making it less, making it smaller, making it more practical, making it more bullet points, making it leaner, straighter, to the point, and getting it. The one thing that I was concerned about when I got the hard copy of the book in my hands for the first time is the fact that it's not super thick. But then I had to remind myself that this was the point. The point was and that's why we split it into a hard copy book and an ebook. And the ebook companion, if we had made it all one thing, the thing would have mushroomed quite a bit. And I didn't want it to scare people who have been tweeting 140 characters, or kind of people who only read Instagram posts, people who don't consider themselves voracious readers. I didn't want to scare them off. I wanted this to seem like the kind of thing you could read on a flight to Cape Town or on a Sunday afternoon, and for it to be as practical and as to the point and as lean as possible.
And I think that's also probably one of the tricks in social media, in that you shouldn't be writing paragraphs. You need to make it succinct and short text. That's one of the tricks, I would say.
Yeah, it takes longer to make something short. That's the irony. If I had time, I would have been brief. There's a quote about that. I can't remember who said it, but it literally boils down to the fact that anyone could waffle on for an hour. Anyone could probably, if they planted themselves in front of a keyboard, type out, a volume of thoughts. It's in the refinement of it and in the packaging of it that's where the work lies, is making it incredibly focused and consumer focused. And that's the point of creating content, is making it as consumer focused, as useful as possible.
So important for you was to make it accessible, so anyone can do it.
Yeah, and the one thing that I had to kind of work with my editor on was to not assume any prior knowledge, because a lot of the problem with being in the industry for so long is that you start assuming everyone knows what engagement is, assuming that everyone knows what metrics are, what insights are, how this works, how that works. And so I had to really, in writing the book, go back to kind of constantly asking myself, if I had to explain this to someone who just stepped out of a time machine, and hadn't been around for the last 20 years of media and social media development, make it as accessible. Because the thing that you do when you assume that people know things is that you immediately make them feel left behind, and that's when readers drop out of the reading experience, because they start feeling like, this isn't for me. I don't have the prerequisite kind of experience and knowledge, and that's the one thing I didn't want this book. I didn't want the book to exclude everyone. The whole point of it is whether you are 14 or 45. If you want to make content, there are some very practical, simple, incredibly accessible things that we should open the industry up with and share with more people.
Yeah. So just want to say hi to Hiromi from Vusta. So we had a webinar earlier on for students, and Hiromi is from UWC, and he won a copy of your book.
Oh,
competition there for all the students.
Yay.
So hi, Hiromi. And we also have Percy Sledge. from Northwest.
What a
And
name, Percy.
I know. And Richard from Wisteria.
Hi,
Natasha from
Natasha.
Wiseman from Limpopo, and Dineo from Limpopo. I think we're well covered.
I love that Limpopo is in the house. Limpopo isn't often well represented on a lot of these things. So awesome to have you guys along.
Yeah. So since she's told you all about her book, we have an amazing competition. So, sorry, I think there's an echo. I don't know where it's coming from. Okay, sorry. So if you want to get your hand on a signed copy of Elma's book, you must comment below on what the word influencer means to you. And Elma is going to choose her favorite comment.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
So comment, let us know. But we won't choose now. I think we'll choose like 30 minutes after we're done, you know?
Okay.
So cool. That people have time. We have time to choose. Okay. So yeah, so I've got the prompt there for people. Okay, so now what I want to know from you.
Yes.
I've lost Elma there.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, I lost you for a second. Sorry. Okay, yeah. What I want to know from you is, what does the word influencer mean to you? It's been a buzzword lately, but I want to know from you, what does it mean to have influence?
It was interesting because this is actually something that I asked every single person I interviewed for the book. It's a title so the title of influencer makes some people feel a bit uncomfortable. It makes them feel like it's used with a bit of derision. I think the derision stems from envy. Because if old white capitalist men came up with the influencer industry and were the leading names in the influencer industry instead of young women of all walks of life, I think those old school capitalists out there would have been praised and lauded as, you know, having hacked the shortcut between traditional media and consumers. Because there used to be all of this ownership that controlled how you got to consumers, and big media houses, big broadcasting organizations. It used to be in the control, and I go into that in the book, and so I don't want to waste too much time on it, but there used to be a lot of people who held the strings and who channeled where your content reached the consumer. Now, the democratization of that has meant that anyone who chooses themselves and anyone who learns and adapts and innovates and is willing to take risks and has the energy and the fire of an entrepreneur and the devotion to a specific area of interest and to the craft of creating content. If you pick yourself, you can totally go out there and do this. And so I do think that the bad rap that influencers get isn't necessarily always justified. I think that people misunderstand. They think it's an easy thing to do. It's a shortcut. It's not really a job. You shouldn't really be earning money for this. People just do it for the freebies. And I've actually said this in another interview as well, and I want to reiterate it. Creating content, telling stories isn't anything new. Traditional media have been doing this for decades and hundreds of years, indeed. We have been telling stories as a people, as Homo sapiens, as humans, for as long as we've been around. And so none of this is entirely new. It's just the routes that we are taking that is innovative and fresh and interesting. And so I don't think there should be any shame in monetizing it, in turning it into a content stream. No one begrudges rugby players and footballers out there for playing with big brand names on their chests and being sponsored by brands. We don't begrudge companies the profit they make. We don't begrudge radio stations the fact that they sell airtime to brands. And so I don't think that anyone truly begrudges influencers the sold campaigns they do when those campaigns contain useful information. And so the point of being an influencer is to create useful content that entertains, that inspires, and that kind of really serves a purpose. When you do that, I don't think people mind that it's sold. So for me, influence is about being useful, and it's about finding practical ways of loving the community of people who are there because they find what you generate to be interesting, entertaining, informative.
Yeah. So coming to that, I actually like the story of how you got into digital. Like you said, you were not originally like a digital content creator, but you you saw an opportunity and you went. So maybe could you share that with us?
Yeah, it was. I think it's in Outliers. I don't know if you've read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. He talks a lot about how crucial the timing of your birth is, the generation within which you grow up, the unique opportunities, the windows, the slight little gaps that crack open when you're at that age where you are most likely to take the greatest risks in your life. Now, I was at university when Facebook happened for the first time.
Oh, me too.
So it's very crucial that I was in that kind of frame of mind where the world was open in front of me and I was willing to risk or kind of grab onto anything and give it a good shake and see whether it's for me. And so I was an early adopter of Facebook. I was one of the first people, I'll never forget, I was one of the first people at the University of Stellenbosch to have a Facebook account because I was invited to join Facebook I was an exchange student in Norway in high school. And so the Norwegian kids that I knew from Oslo, they were on it first. And so I got an invite from Norwegian friends to join Facebook as a means to keep in touch with them. It wasn't a thing at Stellenbosch yet. And so when I joined Facebook, I went, oh, okay. These are all the people that they study with. And you kind of logged on. And in your bio or kind of your name, and then your subheading was the university you studied at, and then that was kind of the network within which you joined. So this was very early days, and I think that timing, that's crucial in my journey. That was crucial. The fact that I joined Facebook as a curious university student and felt like there was nothing to lose there. And then when I had started working, a lot of the people that I was working with were a lot older and a lot more experienced. And so their way of doing TV was very set and very structured and very top down. We create the content, the viewer consumes it. There's nothing in the middle. There was a calling in program, so people could call on a Monday night, but there was no real other engagement. If they wanted to, they could comment on Facebook. And because I was at 5FM at that stage, and at MCAR, the music channel that existed on DSTV before then, and we had already integrated social media and user-generated kind of input and live feedback, during shows. This was something that I was very adept at doing because I'd just come out of university into traditional broadcasting, which was aimed at people who were in their late teens and early 20s. And so that was very normal for me to do. But at Supersport, it certainly wasn't the norm. And I really pushed digital content, user-generated, so content from viewers. I closely listened to what viewers had to say on Twitter and on Facebook. I really, I got into massive arguments with colleagues about this because they would say, for example, there was one argument in 2011 at the Rugby World Cup where someone senior in the team said to me, and I wanted to do a whole thing about Twitter, and he said, listen, Twitter's a fad. By next year, it's not going to be around anymore. And I said, it's not a fad. And so every time something new comes out, when Snapchat came out, when TikTok first kind of started bubbling, we tend to look at it and go, this is probably not going to last long. And there are so many of these fads that don't last. There are so many social networks that don't exist anymore. I mean, I outline that in the book as well. But you should never discount a new entrant into the market just because you don't at that stage get it. You must remember to stay kind of open-minded and really patient with the process, because it might just be Twitter, it might just be the next Facebook, it might just be the next Instagram, and it might just open up so many opportunities, because the fact that I used something that was internally considered to be pretty unpopular as the thing that set me apart is what in the end landed me opportunities with the ICC and with World Rugby last year. It's because I focused, despite the fact that I worked in a very linear broadcasting TV environment, traditional media environment, within that environment, I really actively positioned myself as someone who was constantly driving digital. And the fact that I could boast that helped me leap into interesting new areas.
So you can say that for anyone who is watching, that believing in having something that you believe in and going with it. And I think that's what you could easily have given in, right? Be like, oh, there's no buy-in for social media. I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, I think that for me, digital content was something. It was a hill I was willing to die on, and it wasn't always apparent and obvious that it was going to become as entrenched and that the lines between traditional and digital was going to become as blurred as they are now. I promise you, in 2011. It was like a great wide big ocean between the two. I think that you do need to find the thing that makes you tick, the area of interest that really kind of gets you going, and I think the thing is to find the stuff you procrastinate with. What's the stuff you procrastinate with?
That's such a good idea.
What's the interest?
That's very good.
What's the interest that you waste time on? That you waste because you're not wasting. What is the field that that's your guilty pleasure? Because that'll obviously unlock something that you'd love to do more of.
Yes. I think that's like the best advice I've ever heard. It makes so much sense. So I think this probably leads to my next question, right? Because to add to your impressive portfolio, you're also verified on Twitter. And that's not easy. I know that. It's not a very easy thing to get. So does one set out to be an influencer, or is it something that happens organically? I mean, like, how should people go about it?
I think you should pick yourself. Look, there was a time, I would say probably about 7-8 years ago, there was a time in which I felt like, and this was my anecdotal experience, but I've also had this conversation with a few people, obviously. It felt like brands were ahead of influencers in terms of, so brands had budget, and advertising agencies and people who worked in the digital space, in the ad business, were awake to the fact that if they gave product to a certain few people, this would yield reviews, and this word of mouth kind of influencer recommendation thing did spark off really interesting advertising or marketing opportunities that lived outside of traditional media. But I don't think influencers were aware of these opportunities yet. They were the bloggers. And I don't know if bloggers, the phase of the blogger was really influencers trying to still be very traditional media and how they did things. Everything was long form. It was like a whole post, and even the format of a blog looked like a website would, like a news website would. And so I think we were still figuring out as content creators how to be our own platform without being on a platform. So if I create my own platform, if I create my own blog, at that stage, the trend was for it to look like a website. And I feel like it's almost all shifted onto microblogging and onto video and images. And I mean, there was a time about 4 or 5 years ago where everyone was saying the future is video, but we didn't quite know how was it going to be. How is the future going to be video? And Insta stories and Reels and TikTok and Snapchat, all of these things kind of made that light bulb go up for us and went, oh, this is what we were talking about, video being the future. So it's interesting. I think the thing is that now what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing now in 2021, the focus is going to have to be, the market is becoming a lot more crowded. And there is a lot of work. There is a lot more opportunity than there used to be. Many very small brands are rather advertising with micro and nano influencers than they are running actual paid campaigns anywhere else. And so the opportunity pool has become very big, but obviously it's also become a lot more crowded with more influencers kind of participating. In order to become a verified influencer with a loyal and consistently kind of interested audience, you have to focus on the content. You can't focus on the sales. So you can't focus on the fact that you want to make X amount of money a month. You need to focus on the process, because that's the thing that follows on the process. If your focus isn't the content, if your focus isn't creating the stuff that my consumer loves, that they find useful, that they find interesting, if that isn't where your focus is, you're never going to get to the result. And so I think you have to be very process driven. You have to, like Nadia Jafta says, she monitors insights like a hawk. You know, she's constantly checking, what are people watching? How long are they watching for? What are they swiping through? What are they coming back for? What are they saving? What are they sharing? She is constantly checking to see what her follower loves. Because as long as they keep loving what you are making, the rest will really look after itself. That is not to say that if you have great loyal fans and an amazing following, that the money will take care of itself. You do have to also be a really good entrepreneur. It is also smart going out to brands and pitching campaigns to them, because it allows you to make the kind of content that you are truly engaged with, that you are truly interested in, and that you can truly create value for your audience. So I mean, Liesel and I were literally just talking about that the other day, where she said a lot of the frustration that we as influencers have when brands approach us with stuff is that we don't feel like this resonates exactly with how we would tell a story, or we don't feel like this is something that we can honestly pull off. But the product is great. The product is awesome. And it is something that I love using, and it is something that I would recommend to my friends. But the way in which I would actually do this is, you know, you take a different route there. And so that's why I think that you should pick yourself. You should say, I think I should work with this brand, and then approach the brand and say, I love your product because X, Y, and Z. I propose we do a campaign on it this way. And then obviously the brand can say, listen, not at this stage, but at least in the relationship, you've laid the foundation for the relationship. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
So a question on that then. So if your social media account has like 100 followers, I'm like, when can you approach a brand? I'm like, do you have to have a certain cap before you can go?
I think that you need to put yourself in the shoes of the brand. So consider the marketing manager or the owner of the organization you want to work with. What are they going to look for? They're going to look for track record. Have you worked with other brands before, and what was the results you yielded then? Before you can do paid campaigns, you're going to have to do a few barter campaigns, proof of concept campaigns that show that you know what your followers love. Even if there are only 1,000 of them, you know what they are interested in. You've identified a product that they'd love. Even if you and 2 other influencers in your scene, you know, so let's say you're a beauty influencer,
Yeah.
you've found 2 other beauty influencers who are kind of relatively speaking on the same level. The 3 of you have clubbed together you've identified the fact that your followers want, okay, let's say you're a gaming influencer, and you and 2 other gaming influencers have identified that all your followers want in their life at this stage is a PS5. You've managed to club together enough cash between 5 of you to buy one, and you're going to give it away to one of the followers that the group of you have together through a campaign. So you run a collaborative campaign. You are confident enough in the fact that what you offer followers of this interest group is different to the other people in that grouping. But together, the bunch of you have decided we don't have brands who want to give us stuff yet. We don't have people who want to run paid campaigns with us yet. But we are passionate that we know what our followers love. If you bring that level of initiative, if you start running something that at least looks like a campaign and can yield metrics and that can show up as something that you can replicate, that's what you can take to a brand and really kind of capture their imagination with. So think like someone who's running a brand. Take them something that makes them go, this kid doesn't have 1 million followers. They're a nano influencer. They might have 1,100 followers, but their followers are loyal. They seem to really engage. They seem to be really interested in the stories this person tells. They really seem to find the content useful. And they have generated interest in a giveaway before, and this is how well it went.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's not that hard. The hardest thing here is to consider yourself worthy in the first place.
Yeah. And
then to put yourself out there, and then to really take your own challenge up and say, I'm not going to back off from this. I'm going to find a way to prove that I have something here, that there is a community here to sell to, and people who are interested in this field.
And so, so we've got some students that are tuned in. How do you think, so that, in Phoenix, students come on, they've got a profile, then they have to go out there and share on the social media platforms and get people buy-in so that they can donate to their profiles. What would you suggest? How could students tap into this thinking of being an influencer for them to then fundraise?
I think it's essentially doing that, fundraising is influencer work, because you are telling a story. You are presenting a narrative that captivates the imagination of someone out there. And so the Phoenix profiles that I love are the ones that are very complete in terms of the amount of information that they provide. So they say, this is where I'm from. This is what I can do. This is what sets me apart. This is what I want to change in the world. And this is how I've already started changing this is how I do what I can, where I am with what I have. And this is what I need to do more. And so it sounds really simple and kind of obvious, but that's effectively what you do as an influencer all the time. You are telling stories. You are presenting people with content, with a narrative, with information, and with the at least the kind of hope, the spark, the imagination that is required to move to the next level. So if you want to know how the perfect liquid liner is applied, I have got the solution to that problem. Is not that different to, I know how to change the lives of rural people. I want to become a doctor. This is how you can help me achieve this. Inequality is a big issue in South Africa. You've seen people begging at the robot. I want to become an entrepreneur that creates a company that hires 1,000 people, and you can help me do that. Yes. I know that I have the determination and the inclination, the fire, and all I need at this stage is someone to teach me more skill.
Yes, I hope the students are taking notes because I think this is like to make a foolproof profile. I mean, because students can still edit their profiles right now, and that's like, I think, very informative. And just like, because people don't think of it as creating your own story and owning it. I mean, it's also a great opportunity for you to actually learn how to craft your story, because it's yeah.
And I think that you need to put yourself in the shoes of your potential funder. So when you write your profile, read it to kind of take yourself, get out of your own way and read it like someone who is making enough money that they can help crowdfund other people's studies. Who are the people who tend to crowdfund other people's studies? Probably someone who has studied themselves. Probably someone who might work in the field that I want to work in already. Probably someone who has had to rely on bursaries and help from outside when they came through their studies. And so if you are putting yourself in the shoes and in the mind of this person, what are the things that would convince them, that would move them to action? I think it's you are essentially speaking to your future self.
Yeah. Yes. I think also, I don't want to give away too much, so people must buy your book. It's available on the Lapa website and online and at most good bookstores. Yes. So you can get the book. It's nice, it's accessible, and it will really change your life. And I think also, if you have any questions, I'm just wondering if people have any questions.
Because I've just been rambling on and on and on.
So Hiromi is like, I think what helped me was by being raw, authentic, and real in my Phoenix profile, and funders not to be afraid to be vulnerable. And I think you also talk about authenticity in, I don't remember where I saw it. I saw it somewhere where you're talking about authenticity and how important it is when you want to become a brand, when you become an influencer.
Yeah, because the thing that a lot of the influencers that I spoke to kept on saying is it's very hard to keep posting and to maintain a regular rate of generating content when you have to put too much thought into it. So it needs to be as natural and as close to the bone and as honest and as free as possible, because and this is something that Katan Kat said and Bauer Bosch said. A lot of people said the best stuff, the stuff that has performed the best for me, the content that has had the greatest impact has often been the stuff that I just did.
Yeah.
Where it was the least contrived. So Vian Magic, for example, says he has closely scripted, planned, basically like a movie. He has flown to Cape Town and done magic tricks on the beach in Camps Bay because he thought that magic tricks videos where you're on the beach, there's girls in bikinis, and you have a crowd of people who are impressed and kind of awestruck by what you are doing, that is going to yield engagement. But a lot of the time, the stupid tricks he played on his mom at home actually did better. And so he started realizing that you really need to get out of your own way. Sometimes the best stuff happens when you are the most honest, when you are the most vulnerable. As Hiromi says, you really speak to people in a way that probably no one else can, when you are being the most you. And for me, the thing that happened when I joined 5FM, I studied in Afrikaans. I went to school in Afrikaans. I did all of my campus radio shows in Afrikaans. And so when I moved to Wits, I was like an alien. So this is like I mean, if you've ever been to Wits, you'll know that like it's not an Afrikaans space, you know. Yeah. So I really was a bit of an alien there, and then I started working in 5FM, where I was even more of an alien, and it was kind of right about the time when Jack Barrow came out with Kulera's Acker.
Yeah.
And I really pushed for Kulera's Acker to be playlisted at 5 because I just thought it was so cool to have hip hop happen in Afrikaans, but not Brasse van die Kaap Afrikaans. Afrikaans. This guy came from the wrong side of the Boereworsgordijn. He was, he didn't pretend to be cool or be well off or be fancy or be trendy. He was like, I am not the cool kid. And I realized that level of authenticity made him so endearing, and that me trying to underplay my Afrikaansness because it was the furthest thing from cool in Joburg was the stupidest thing to do. And so I started hamming up the fact that I was that Macy from, that girl next door who loved Rappie and who, grew up doing langarm sokkie at school, like that's literally that's what we did at our matric farewell. We were there, Kurt there and Hemel op Tafelberg. And so playing small and trying to deny that isn't going to serve me at all because it's not honest. And I'm only ever going to be a very second-rate Joburg girl. Whereas if I'm free to be the most Afrikaans kind of plattelandse version of myself, then there's going to be a lot of authenticity and honesty and realness and relatability probably that's going to come from
it. And probably, that is true. And I think maybe Elsa, I think her name is Elsa, the girl from Kenya who just blew up. I mean, she's very authentic. She's like very awkward and people loved her. And she was very different to everything else everyone else was pushing. And she's like getting those deals. I mean, Fenty center glasses.
Exactly.
Like, how far it goes.
And even Nadia Jafta. So Nadia Jafta initially, her early work, if you really go mine her track record online, she was a fashion blogger. She posted very fashion heavy stuff. So it was all kind of photo shooty. Then she did lots of dancing videos and I mean, she can really dance. So the girl has the moves. She did loads of dancing videos. And then it was the stuff that she did when she let her guard down, when she pranked her mom, when she was just at home being a goofball. That's the stuff that blew up. That's the stuff that she built her audience on. She's still that hot girl. She's still that girl who loves fashion. She's still that one who has the moves. And that's still very part of her kind of, particularly her TikTok persona, but her persona generally on all platforms. She's not underplaying any of that stuff. But the stuff that really built her audience was her letting her guard down and showing people her unconventional family and their unconventional sense of humor.
Yeah, there's power in being who you are, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so who should be reading your book?
Anyone who would like to build a community around an interest that they are truly passionate about. Whether you monetize that interest and that community or not is up to you. The book is aimed at monetizing this interest and this community. But I think that you need to find a way of loving people practically, loving a field of interest. Nadia, for example, using her sense of humor and her vulnerability around who her family is and how they relate to one another. It's a generous act. That's a very generous way of sharing yourself with people. And it's aimed at making us laugh. And that's love. That's like the most kind of selfless thing. And so when people look at her and go, oh yeah, she's making so much money, she gets to go on these cool trips, and she's making movies and she's doing all these things, and they're envious of it. I think that that's really short-sighted, because the essence of what she does is she entertains and she takes us along on her journeys and the funny kind of quirky things that she thinks of. That's a way of loving people. And I think that anyone who thinks that they have an interest, maybe a funny side to their personality, an obsession with sport or with gaming or with music or with fashion or beauty or whatever, gardening, their shoe collection, if there is something there that you feel like you could really share with other people who are as geeky about these things as you are, that could really strike a chord, do it for that reason. The rest of the stuff will follow.
Definitely. I think that's one of my theories in life. Do what you love and everything else will follow.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Elma. You can ask questions. You can post them below. Maybe Elma will answer later on. And we will end this. And then we are going to go through the comments, and then we're going to choose, and we're going to post, and we're going to DM the person. So that we have time to actually engage and read and like appreciate everything you said.
Yeah, I love the fact that I'm seeing that there's comments here on Facebook already.
Yeah,
and so many of them, and people have really thought about this. So it's really interesting to me to see all of this. And I think that's the thing that I most want to come out of this book, is just for more people to talk about what great content is, what great storytelling requires of us, who we love, because that's something that I asked everyone that I interviewed for the book. I asked everyone that I interviewed, who are the 3 people you love following? Who really gets it right out there? Where do we find inspiration? Who kind of opens our minds to what else is possible? Who's innovating and driving? And I'd love to see more of those conversations happen.
Okay, so before we go then, I keep saying this before we go, there's so many things coming up. Who do you love?
Who do I love following? I really love following Rachel Colisi.
Right.
Rachel so Rachel obviously is someone who has had her fair share of drums on social media, but she's very intentional. I love that she uses her platform in a way that is clearly, she has a clear strategy. She knows what she wants to achieve. She wants to help. She wants to change. She wants to address and tackle issues. And she is incredibly generous. I think that we underestimate how incredibly exposed you could feel if you're in that position. And so I think that it is a brave and generous way of using her name and her stature and her position in a way that doesn't make women feel small, which I love. So I love what she does. I really love the way Mops has such an entrepreneurial way of thinking about the brands he works with. So I've spoken to people in the industry who run brands, and they all say that he comes to the table so committed to your brand. He thinks like a brand manager. He thinks like an ad industry professional. And so I love that he brings that switched on professionalism to it. I mean, you'll read more of what he says in the book, but I really felt like he opened even my mind to the standard to which we could hold ourselves if we really wanted to. And I've really adopted a lot of what he says in how I deal with brands. And so I think that he sets the bar really high. And it's interesting because he's a guy, and most influencers who do very well are women. But the men who do it, are men who are doing amazing work. And then I really love just watching the fresh freedom with which people like Nadia and Katinka Kat runs their accounts, even Bauer, the level of vulnerability that humor often requires, I think, is underrated. I don't think that we appreciate how much guts it takes to put yourself out there and have people laugh at you. Yeah. And so I don't do humor well. It's not something that I've I always say to clients, it's not my thing. But I have the greatest respect for people who pull humor off well and who do it in an endearing way and in a way that opens up the stereotypes around their identity. So Bauer opens up the stereotypes around being Afrikaans and an Afrikaans guy of a certain generation, and really challenges it. Nadia opens up, the whole narrative of what it is to be like that truly Capetonian, like that really hot chick from Cape Town who goes to the mall and drives a Jeep and is glamorous and hot, but at the same time funny and self-deprecating. I love that there is the surprise element to her persona. And Katinka is similar. Katinka, you could easily kind of flatten her down to just being like a goofy YouTube Afrikaans blonde, really pretty girl with, these beautiful, huge blue eyes. But she's such a savvy business person, and she has amazing kind of conviction and a kind of self-knowledge about who she is and what she's good at, which I think is freaking amazing.
Yeah, that is. So is there anything you want to say before we say bye? Anything?
Share your thoughts, your reviews, your feedback, what you've learned, what you love, what you don't love, who you love following. I would love us to have more conversations about the industry and give props to people that we think are doing it well. Let's celebrate the examples of where people have chosen themselves, have stood up and said, I'm going to make content, because it is a very brave thing to do.
Yes.
It could be very scary. It can be daunting. And I think that what a lot of the people that I interviewed said over and over when I said, what advice would you give that person? Like in Katinka's case, she started making content when she was in high school. What would you tell high school Katinka now? And she said, I would tell that Katinka to not be so concerned about what people say, because people probably won't get you ever. So the ones who don't get you at school probably won't get you as an adult, but it doesn't matter. Just you do you, boo. You do you.
That's the best advice you can ever have.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you to everyone who has joined us. Thank you so much, Elma. It's always great talking to you. I think one thing I didn't mention is Elma is like a Phoenix ambassador. Like, we love her. And probably if we had, we'd have like a poster up.
I just love the work you guys do. I think that it's so important for us to raise the next generation of leaders up and give them the opportunity to learn.
Yes. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Cheers.